This is the 5th annual steak night. It is the 1st annual at home. It is the first of 5 years that we're not doing this over Sukkot. But if we were, it would be a pleasure for me to welcome you to the Matlow residence. Also, a special shout out to all of our friends from Montreal. This is our first national, or at least somewhat more inclusive of a virtual evening. So I'm going to turn it over for now to David and Leanne Matlow. But first, I just want to say thank you to David and Leanne Matlow, to DSM Foods, who are the ones behind the steak that you got. And the steak, in case anybody's wondering, is from Solomon's in Nebraska. It is a Black Angus, and it is hormone and antibody free. And it's uncooked. And it is uncooked, but we're going to get to all that later. Also, thank you to Larry Rich, to our friends at JP Weiser, to our friends at Corby, and to Anthony Rose and Rob Wilder. So now, David, Leanne, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry that this year we're not in the backyard. We usually have the Sukkah event, so it's nice to invite everyone to our house and not come inside, but go in the backyard. But today we're inside and everyone's safely in their home, so we hope everyone is safe and well. And we're in for a very fun evening, if the first 5 minutes are any indication. So I'm David, and this is Leanne. And of course, we're here in support of Tel Aviv University. We each received this delicious Nebraska steak, which we're going to be cooking in the frying pan at 450 degrees. But I should say that the experts, the scientists, the brains at Tel Aviv University are working on an innovation for us that perhaps for our steak night next year, we'll be able to do something different. Professor Tal Dvir of the Department of Molecular Biology and Biotechnology at Tel Aviv University. This is the person who was working on the 3D printed human heart, but he's working on something much more important than that, which is a printable steak.
No way.
Yeah, wow. So he is working on a steak. It requires a new bioreactor that will produce billions of cells that will then be shaped into look like a steak with the fat and the bone and all that. So hopefully when we emerge from the pandemic, we'll be able to have parve steak printed on our home printers thanks to Tel Aviv University. That's actually true. It's not a comedy routine. It's actually true. I read it online, so it must be true. This is the kind of work that's being done at Tel Aviv University thanks to the support of everyone on this steak and whiskey night. And this is even before engaging in the whiskey. It's my privilege to introduce the food part of our talent, and then Leanne will introduce the drinking part. Leanne is from Kitchener, so that's much more appropriate to her to do the drinking part. So Chef Anthony Rose, and we'll be hearing from him and learning from him in a few minutes. Before he became a star on Toronto's explosive restaurant scene, Anthony Rose honed his skills at some of the top kitchens in San Francisco and in New York. In San Francisco, he was at the Michelin-starred Bradley Ogden, and he fostered his philosophy combining simple, elegant principles of the French method during his tenure at the Mercer with Jean-Georges Van Gerichten, and all of us who follow cooking will be familiar with Van Gerichten's work, and then with Jonathan Waxman at Washington Park, and then thankfully Anthony returned home and he became the head chef at the Drake, and then thankfully he opened his first restaurant, the iconic Rose and Sons on DuPont. And there is now the Wilder Rose Empire. It consists of 6 restaurants: Rose and Sons, Big Crow Chalet, Fat Pasha, Fete Zunkamp, Madame Boeuf and Flea, and Schmaltz Appetizing. And he also wrote this fabulous cookbook, the Schmaltz, which is a very serious cookbook. which weaves together stories of Anthony's culture, experiences, and nostalgia, and relentless love of food. And his business partner is Rob Wilder, who provided the best biography that I've ever seen. As written by Rob himself, I suppose. Rob is a nice guy. He loves fires, camping, his dog Bernie, and his best friend, Anthony Rose. He has a wife and kids, and he's awfully fond of them. He's done lots of stuff and plans to do lots more. So let me now turn it over to Leanne to introduce our whiskey sommelier.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are so happy tonight to welcome Colin MacDougall, who's joining us all the way from the coast. He is in British Columbia. He's a portfolio consultant who's an expert in brand strategy and education and advocacy. He really believes that it's important to know what you're drinking and your passion about certain products. He knows everything that there is to know about the beverage industry since the early 2000s. He's an expert on the stories, and I haven't drank anything, and nuances of the world of spirits and everything it has to offer. He's a familiar face as a bar manager at a number of prestigious restaurants, including Melba's on the Park, West, Poorhouse, and the Blue Water Cafe, all of which you could probably fly to because they're still in Canada. So without further ado, I know what you're really waiting for. You are waiting for Colin so you can open some of these little babies.
And while we're having our introductory beverage, feel free to enjoy the hors d'oeuvres. And there's a delicious French onion soup, which is our first course that coincides with the first installment of alcohol
which
beverage.
You heat in a pot on your stovetop.
Enjoy, everyone. We'll be back if you can stand us.
Wonderful. Leanne, thank you for that great introduction. Everybody can hear me here. I'm not on mute. We're live?
You're
Beautiful. Good. Excellent. So thank you very much. I am truly thrilled to be here to meet, the CFTU, the Canadian Friends of Tel Aviv University. It is a pleasure. These interactions are fewer and far between these days. So I've been waiting, Stephen and I have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. I think everybody should just give a little moment of congratulations to Stephen for really pulling this together, because it was a lot of work. So I just want to give you a quick high five there. Yeah. And we had some challenges. We made it through, and
getting drinking, it's fine. It's all good.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no wrong way to do this. The only thing I'd suggest is keeping, if you saw my teaser video there, keep just a little bit of the triple barrel and the 15-year-old for a little bit later on when we do like a comparative whiskey tasting. So we can have that on the side there. If we have some ice in the freezer, I'm going to show you these two whiskey cocktails and bring you through them. And when I get a chance here too, I just want to, so we'll get that going. We'll get the night rolling, get a drink in everybody's hand. And then when we get to the portion later, I'll kind of go a little more in depth on, kind of my story. I've had the pleasure of working with international brands like Jameson from Ireland, V. Glenlivet, with JP Weiser's here now in Lot 40. And I've met the master distillers and blenders from all over the world. I think I've got a really diverse background when it comes to spirits and spirit education. So I'm really excited to share my passion with you tonight. So the one thing I do want to just point out, we were able to secure a little bonus add-on here tonight. So the Cabot Trail here is a truly amazing Canadian product using cream, maple syrup. This is in the same family as like Bailey's. So like just a shout out there. This is for another date. We're having a meet tonight. So this is to enjoy another time, but throw it on the back bar and enjoy that later. And it is truly like a premium cream liqueur. It would be in the same realm as Bailey's, but this is really like Canada throwing everything at it and making, in my opinion, like a way more superior product. So give that a shot. So before we get into doing our steaks, and start preparing the dinner, I thought it would be fun for everybody just to have a drink in front of them. And when we were talking about this here, I was like, okay, what am I going to do? I don't want this to just be whiskey. I don't want to put you to work. And fortunately, over the last year or so, I've been working on delivering on this JP Weiser's Manhattan in an old fashioned in a bottle. We didn't go into this trying to make something quick. We actually went back and forth. We consulted with a lot of us in the company. Personally, I bartended for about 15 years, and I was a menu consultant and architect for like Rogers Arena, for all the loge, like the premium sections for that, and Blue Water Cafe and Raw Bar, which is a pretty big restaurant down here in Vancouver, voted #1 quite a few years in a row. So, so yeah, I mean, trying to pat myself on the back here, but I kind of know what I'm talking about. So what we did is with these two, you've got one of each of these side by side, and I'll go into those a little more in detail later. But what I want you to do now, I said you have some ice in the freezer, so let's all go grab some ice from the freezer. You've got your amazing glass we got created for you, so let's top that guy with ice. Come back here to the bar, and then we're gonna pour one or both of those in, and we'll get into them. So we got something going to give us some inspiration for that steak. So I'll be right back with my ice. So a big question I get on these quite a lot is, you know, if you have these like really nice slow diluting ice cubes that you see going out there, these silicone mold ones, they do, it's not the worst thing to have for that, but this was designed, you'll notice the ABV on both of them is 35%. So that's a little under your standard whiskey percent. And that was on purpose because when you're using just regular ice and you're pouring that in, so let's go for it. What I'm thinking right here for me personally, I'm gonna have my Manhattan, let it sweat down with the ice. And when I'm finished the Manhattan, then I'm gonna pour in a little more ice and pour in that old fashioned. If you want to do the old fashioned first in that order, it doesn't matter. They both have great flavors that complement each other. But for you guys, you've got your little mini, just pop that right in. I've got the big bottle here, which is the 750 ml you can find in the store. And all this really needs, you know, if you're Gary Regan down in Louisiana, you're gonna do a little finger stir, the famous finger bar stir. I've got a little spoon here, but all you need to do, give it a little stir to get it activated, and then just all you're trying to do is get it down to temperature. And what's gonna happen, if you're interested in the science of this, is that dilution is going to go from 35% down to like 20 to 25. And if you're in a bar and somebody's making you a Manhattan or old fashioned, when they're adding all these ingredients, I got them here in front of me, one by one, stirring it and then pouring it into a new glass. If you measure the alcohol percentage of it, it's between 20 and 25. So it wasn't a mistake. I know I'm getting really technical, but
which drink is this? Which one are you doing?
So you can either choose the old fashioned or the Manhattan, your choice. Oh. Yeah, one or the other, and there's no wrong. If you go from the old fashioned first to the Manhattan to the old fashioned, they're both going to taste great.
Okay, so I'll do the old fashioned first.
Beauty. So yeah, so just get that in over ice, and really this is like, you know, for me, I've bartending for years. I close down a bar. I get home at like 2 a.m. Am I making an old fashioned or a Manhattan? No. Like the boys there, the Rose. Like, are you guys cooking steaks at 2 a.m.? You're tired, right?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, all right. So this is the answer to, you know, all the work is done before. In this bottle here, in this Manhattan bottle I'm going to pick out, what you have essentially is this filled up with, you know, a 5-year-old corn and rye whiskey. It's got about 25 dashes of bitters, a little bit of sugar, and then sweet vermouth for this one. But it's like a pre-batched, right? Somebody's done all the work, it's in there, and it's ready to go. So all you have to do is pour it over ice. I think these were really well done. Don actually created a proprietary vermouth for this. And we use real Angostura bitters, which is the base for like a classic cocktail. So yeah, that's it. Have a sip and we can start getting into it, and we'll come back here in a little bit and go through a few of the whiskeys. Okay. Any questions there?
I have a question.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So I took a little bit of the old fashioned first. So I drink this and then have the Manhattan after it?
Yeah, I mean, dealer's choice. I mean, there's in that 50 ml bottle, that's about the portion of, if you were in a restaurant, that's how much they'd give you for one full cocktail. So if you want to do like half now, sip it until it's gone, half the Manhattan, top that up. The remnants of your old fashioned, they're gonna play great together for sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are these available in the liquor store? These little pre-made cocktails?
No, they're not. Those are shipped directly from Pike Creek to the Canadian Friends of Tel Aviv University event here.
This is fantastic.
These are cool, eh? We and Stephen can contest to it. It took a little bit of we had to pry it out of their hands a little bit to get it away from them. But the ones that are available are, I've got an example here. You've got a 375 ml, so like, you know, a half bottle, and you've got the full 750 ml available.
Dave Mitten, can I get these guys?
I mean, if you lean on them pretty hard, you might be able to squeeze it out of them.
Okay.
We the ones that are there, they're usually used for promotional. You know,
They're so
I took
cool.
them.
I've never seen them before. I love it.
They're awesome, eh? I've been pushing to get these on airplanes, to get them into golf courses so that you can just pour it over ice. So we're working on that, and I'm pushing hard for it. But
all right, let's make some steaks.
Yeah, let's get to it. So cheers. Any questions, throw it at me, but let's get into some meat.
Cheers. Thank you, Colin.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, Anthony. Oh, Rob, it's all you. Walk us
Thanks,
through.
Marty. Guys, thank you so much for having Rob and I here tonight. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Anthony. How are you?
We're
What are you cooking? What are you cooking tonight?
so pleased to be here. So happy to support, and just really, you know, just tickled that you guys thought about us, and we hope that, you know, we're entertaining. We hope that the food actually turns out delicious, and we just hope that you like us and you invite us back to the backyard next year, that we can't go inside the house. So we'll see.
That was great.
Tonight we're cooking one of my favorite things, which is steak. I eat a lot of steak, and Rob, if you can believe it, eats more steak than I do. The whole family, for that matter. So we're doing a very simple dish tonight of pan-seared, kosher, beautiful Nebraska ribeye steak with what I like to call a Forestier sauce or addition. So we call it steak a la Forestier, which is a really fancy way of saying steak with mushrooms, which is my father's favorite dish. I took the liberty of taking the steak out of the vacuum packed sealed bag that it came in, and I'd love for you guys to do the same thing now. If you have some paper towel available to you, I just want you to pat them dry so you get rid of that moisture.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, right? And
why do you want to try?
great question, Rob. And if anyone has questions, please
Send them to me and I'll ask Anthony.
send them to Rob. Can anyone shout out questions like they did with Colin? Because that was fun. No. Okay.
Okay.
So
why did you pat it dry?
I pat it dry because as it kind of sits in the bag, and I actually like steaks that have sat in the bag for a while to get some of that age on them, but I'm getting rid of some of that moisture on it. When the steak hits the pan, the first thing that it does is first it evaporates the moisture. So that's kind of in the way of getting that beautiful sear on the steak. So by patting it dry and getting rid of the moisture, you're kind of getting rid of that step completely right away. So once the steak is out of the bag, it's on a plate, all you're going to do is just kind of put it on the table next to you over there.
I'll put it on the table next to me over here. Do you see that, Ethan? The placing of the steak on the table?
Yes.
It's very cold here. Are you okay if it sits in cold?
And yeah, I'm okay if it's cold.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And you don't pre-salt your steak?
I'm not pre-salting the steak. I'm not pre-seasoning the steak. There's no pepper, no salt, no olive oil, no nothing. Great question. Rob.
Amazing. Amazing.
I find that ribeye steaks, number one, you never want to put oil on your steaks ahead of time because oil is going to act like a layer in between the seasoning and the steak. You don't want to do that. And I also don't like to pre-season my steaks, especially something kind of this size, because it's also going to bring out the moisture. As soon as you put salt on there, it's going to start bringing out the moisture in the steak as well.
There's a question.
What's the question?
Should the steaks be rinsed?
Absolutely not, Debbie.
All right, next. Great question. No, you should not rinse the steaks. Just take them out of the bag and pat them with a paper towel.
That's it.
That's it.
Don't rinse them.
Don't
Same-
rinse them.
Same thing with the mushrooms. Mushrooms don't need to be rinsed.
If they're dirty, just wipe off the dirt. Right?
Right,
You're right.
right.
Yeah, right. You
So-
don't have pants here.
I got a little pants going on. Debbie asked me to do that for tonight.
Okay, so Ethan, can everyone? Sorry, my son Ethan Concordia video artist,
Okay.
is filming. So this is great production. Ethan, can you see all this stuff on the board?
Yeah, they can. You want me to go any closer?
We're gonna come.
you-
We're
oh,
gonna
you're
come
the big-
close because we're gonna start with 2 things. Number one, Ethan, if you could go right up to the fire and you can show them the pan on the left there. So if you can take the pan, guys, and just put it on your fire over here, Rob.
Well, you'll put on your stove.
You're gonna put a pan on your stove on a medium to high heat because we want to get like a nice sear, not only on the shallots that are going in there, but the garlic and the mushroom. And you could just kind of like let it sit there for a while to get kind of warm while you got everything else going on.
We're Canadians. We only cook on fire. Is that a thing?
No, but it's also, a good point, Rob. Like as much as you and I are in a bubble together and we spend time at the restaurants together, not everyone in your household spends time with me outside of the restaurant or at the restaurant, and same thing in my house. So that's why we're outside here. It was really the safest place for us to be. We couldn't do it at any one of Rob's 6 restaurants because they were all being used today. And we didn't want to do it in my house, and we didn't want to do it in Rob's house because there's other people there.
But more importantly, it's an invitation for Canadians to be outside all winter at our restaurant on our patio. Take it away, Anthony.
So we've got a variety of things here that are going to go into sauce à la forestière. And it's more kind of like a fricassee. So we've got shallots, some thyme, variety of mushrooms. We've got cremini mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, and king oyster mushrooms. So the first thing that we're going to do.
And garlic. You forgot the garlic.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Rob. Garlic. First thing that I want you to do is I asked for 3 cloves of garlic and they gave us 3 heads of garlic. So I just want per each steak, just like 3 cloves, just like that. Just like that, if you could kind of peel them. And then I'm going to take these shallots over here and I'm going to cut them in half. I've got more than I need over here because I've got 2 boxes, but I'm only going to do enough for 1 because that's what each one of you guys has, as far as I'm familiar. Okay, and then you're just going to kind of slice the shallot just like that, all the way up and down. Doesn't have to be pretty. Doesn't have to be pretty like Rob.
Thanks.
And it doesn't have to be as fast. It doesn't have to be exactly what I'm doing, but a version of that. Okay, just kind of like some sliced shallots. What I love about this sauce or this kind of addition to the steak is that it can be chunky. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one's judging you like at the restaurants.
I'm judging you.
Just joking.
I'm judging you.
And then you're going to take your 3 cloves of garlic, okay? And then I like to kind of take my knife right on top. Ethan, can you get a good shot of this? So the knife just goes right on top of the garlic like that.
Oh, well,
And then I just kind of crush it a couple
that's amazing.
times.
Can I try that?
No.
Do you
And then-
point the blade away from you? Is there any
The
sort of
blade is away from you.
any specificity?
The garlic is there. The knife is on top. And I just give it a couple good
Can I
little
try that?
swishes. Sure, you can try it. Actually, I wanted you to. I wasn't quite. Oh, that's a little,
A little awkward. Is that awkward?
little.
Oh yeah. See, Marnie, I can cook. Beautiful.
Okay. And then you're just going to kind of take the garlic just like that. And you're going to give it a few little kind of like once-overs.
You have such long fingers.
You do have quite the long fingers. Okay, and then one more time. And then you're just gonna splooge that garlic over right with the shallots.
With the shallots.
With the shallots.
Some people, they don't do that.
I like to, yeah,
Always
because
together?
always together. I like to do them both at the same time.
Amazing.
It is so amazing.
So you're kind of just getting everything ready before you put it in the pan.
Yes. If you kind of take a look around, we've got the mushrooms, the thyme, the shallots, the garlic, the salt, the pepper, the whiskey to finish, or the brandy to finish the sauce, a little bit of olive oil over here.
A lot of booze.
I got some napkins over here. I got a pair of tongs over here. The pan's ready. It's called mise en place. You know what that means?
It's everything's just ready to go. Okay.
Everything has its place.
Can we say it together?
And we also have
Everything.
the whiskey, which is great. I'm
Cheers.
drinking the
Cheers, Tony.
triple barrel rye.
Cheers, guys.
Who was that?
That was Colin.
that
Colin,
Colin?
yeah.
All right, let's keep cooking.
I'm surprised Marty's been so quiet. I don't like her at all.
So
Now,
Next.
I
now-
muted her. You're all welcome.
with the time, this is the time that we've got here today, and the time with this time of the season, you'll notice that it's very soft all the way through, right? Which is nice, especially for right now. So what I like to do here is two things. Number one is just kind of grab it like in a nice little bunch like that. Put all the soft tips right at the end of it, okay? And then you're just going to kind of, including the little stems, just run your knife all the way through. So depending on the time of year, sometimes a lot of the stems can be quite tough, and we don't use that part. So I'm just going to cut down right to there. And we're just going to reserve this time over here, the tougher stems on the bottom. And then we've got this time over here, and we're just going to put that there. Okay, so all it needs is just like a little once over. Again, doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be good. And then we're going to take the mushrooms one at a time. And again, we're just going to give it a little bit of slice. I like my nut mushrooms kind of big and
Do
chunky.
you know what I love when I watch you cut? You use the entire blade.
The whole plate.
The whole blade. The other day I was cutting and I was using like one little part of the blade, and she's like, use the whole blade. Let me see again.
The idea with using the whole blade is they give you this big knife. This is like a nice big French knife. They give you this whole knife, and you don't want to just kind of go like that.
Well, this is
You
what I
wanna
was doing.
kinda-
Let me show you what I was doing. I was going like this.
Wrong.
And what I noticed is what you do.
Anthony?
Yes,
Quick
Marty.
question. No, it's not Marty, it's Alan, it's her brother-in-law.
Oh,
But
sorry.
go back to the thyme for a second. I was stuck on the thyme. What am I doing with this?
You got some of it chopped, just the tip of it, like the first inch and a half, and then you're
Okay.
just keeping the other part of the thyme, just the bottom of it, a little bit of the woodier part of the thyme over there.
Okay,
Does
thank
everyone
you.
understand that? Colin, did you get that?
I'm on
Okay,
it.
good.
All right, let's keep chopping mushrooms. Look at that, the whole use of the blade.
Whole use of the blade, all the way up and down.
That was like
You
something
make
I
it look
learned.
so easy there.
Yeah, but it's something I learned that was new. And I've been cooking for years. Fascinating, right, Marty?
Fascinating.
Yeah.
What I love about cooking in general is being
You dropped a
outside,
piece on the floor. Can
is
we use
being
that?
is being with Rob,
What about that piece on the
is
floor?
being with Ethan over here as well. Rob's family is inside. We're
Jack-
just
Oh, look at that.
surrounded by
Hi, family.
like good times, you know.
Yeah.
And we are very fortunate that Rob and I, since the beginning, you know, have kept each other in this bubble, and it's just, I just love you, Rob.
I love you, Tony.
Love you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks. All right, back to the mushroom.
So I'm cutting the cremini mushrooms right now.
You know, we wanted to do a TV show about our love. Remember that?
Yeah, Marty was like, absolutely not. No
Yeah.
one cares
No,
about
no one
you
cares how
and your
much you
love
each other.
for each
You
other.
know, I know that you're both in relationships outside of each other, but that's okay.
But we're not.
All right. Well, you're not.
I'm not. I don't know if anyone read my last
Except for
newsletter.
Tony, if you know anyone. Oh, look at that.
And we're doing that king oyster mushroom right now.
But you
And
just put
again-
all the mushrooms together.
I'm putting them all together, guys. And as I said, like, you know, in some of my original notes with these guys, you can use all cremini. Like, you can use all cremini. You can use all shiitake. You can use all king oyster. Like, it doesn't matter. You can use chanterelles. You can use oyster mushrooms. You, like, use whatever you want. If you don't have fresh mushrooms, you can use dried mushrooms. You just have to rehydrate them.
Guys, after we're done with this, I want to ask a question whether you guys think that Anthony and I should do a YouTube, what do you call that, Ethan? A YouTube channel, a YouTube show?
You have a YouTube, do you know a show on
A
YouTube?
a show on YouTube where we just cook around the fire like we're doing now. You guys can vote on that afterwards. Okay.
So you've got
back
your
to you.
you got your pan hot. You got your mushrooms cut, your shallots and garlic chopped over here, and you got the thyme stems, which we're going to use a little bit later. And we got the chopped thyme. You're going to want handy your pepper and your sea salt. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take some of this olive oil over here.
Step back.
And
Whoa.
probably about, for this amount of mushrooms, and I think everyone has the same amount of mushrooms, around, you know, 4 to 5 tablespoons.
Well measured. Well measured.
Remember, mushrooms love olive oil, and mushrooms also love kind of like a nice high heat as well. And because once we kind of get into it, it's just going to be kind of sauteing for a little bit. We're going to put the shallots in there with the garlic.
You see how hot that pan
All
is?
at the same time.
See how hot that pan is? Like, I always think I don't want to mess up my stove, so I'm going to start it cold. You want it really hot. Oh my God, that smells amazing.
Can you get a nice close-up of that?
Yeah.
Do you smell that? Oh my God. That's beautiful.
And you can kind of keep close over here, Ethan. It's going to kind of happen really fast. So you've kind of got this saute over here. And right away to the saute, you're going to add a little bit of that pepper right away. And you're going to add a little bit of that salt.
About a pinch.
About a pinch. And it's kind of like building blocks. So you don't want to season all at the beginning. Are you looking at my face now?
Yeah, your face is in it.
It's handsome, right?
Yes, it's very
You
handsome.
don't want to season all at the beginning. And you don't want to season all at the end. You want to season at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay?
Beautiful. All right. Can you guys smell
Sorry,
that?
Anthony, one more question. You started with the oil.
Yes,
What did you put
Marty,
in?
go ahead.
What did you put in? You started with the oil. What's the first thing you put in?
The shallots and the garlic.
Shallots and the garlic. Thank you.
We put in
Followed-
the oil, shallots and garlic, followed by pepper and salt.
Salt and pepper.
Just a pinch.
Just a pinch.
Not too much.
So, guys, that's been in there for about 45 seconds. We're
So
just
you're
going to
seasoning along the way.
Another question. How much of the oil?
about 4 to 5 tablespoons. Don't be shy on the
Yeah,
oil.
just give it a good glove. Just
And then we're going to put the mushrooms right on top of that.
you getting the see?
Yeah, it's all. It's
Oh
we're
wow!
getting it.
But you're getting him using his hand in a hot pan. Do
Yeah.
not use that at home. Use a tong. Show them how to use the tong.
We're not there yet.
Oh, okay. Is this hot enough?
Anthony, so one question. So are all of the spices in pan right now? The thyme is in, the garlic is in, the salt.
Thyme is not.
Marnie, we started with the olive oil, about 5 tablespoons. And then we added the sliced shallots and the garlic.
It's on you.
Kind of like sauteed that, moved it around for just a second. And then we added all the mushrooms on top of that. There's no thyme in there as of yet.
Just salt and pepper.
Salt and pepper, and that's it.
Thank you, chef.
All right. Wow, look at that.
Can you slow it down a bit, Anthony? Someone said that you're going a little fast.
Oh,
I'm not going to do anything now for a second. So if you need to catch up, we're going to catch up. We're just going to kind of let this hang out here.
You know what I've noticed with the cooking?
So I got to stand up. I pulled my lower back chopping down a tree the other day. So I do have to stretch it out every now
I'm
and
so
then.
strong. What I've noticed about cooking is very interesting. Is at this point, what I would be doing, because I'm not a very good cook, is I would be moving everything around and shuffling it around and wanting to see what's cooking under there. And what I've noticed a lot of the time in the restaurants, you know, I've been there for 8, 10 years or something like that. That a lot of times they just, well, especially Anthony, just lets it sit there.
Just let it sit there.
Let it sit there. What's going on?
So right now what's going on is by adding the mushrooms to the top, we've added a lot of moisture to the pan. Mushrooms are moisture. They're mostly kind of water. We're not looking to kind of evaporate anything. A lot of the mushrooms will kind of give off their own liquid, which we call mushroom liquor for that matter. So right now, all the stuff on the bottom should be caramelizing just a little. And a lot of the moisture from the mushroom is being let into the bottom of the pan as well. It's amazing. We've added a little bit of salt and pepper. And before we stir it, we're going to add a little more salt and pepper, like another pinch of each.
There goes the pepper. Wonderful. And the salt. Very coarse salt.
Very coarse salt.
Yeah.
I'm going to put on my glasses now so I can see better.
Now, if you have a full wooden spoon at home, use that. We only have a half one here. But that's okay. We're very, very, very committed. Let's go.
Now,
Let's see.
Ethan, if you can get a really tight close-up now, we're just going to kind of take a look, okay? Do you have enough light? Can you see?
Yeah.
So we're just going to kind of take a look at what it looks like on the bottom. So you'll notice right now that, yeah, you know, some of the shallots have kind of like caramelized a little. Some of the moisture is coming out from the mushrooms. But we notice that we're not really burning anything. So we're on like a medium to kind of high kind of heat right now. So we're just gonna let it go. And I'm gonna check my other side as well. I know a lot of people at home and probably definitely at my house, you know, some of my burners are hot on one side, not so hot on the other side. But we're cooking on live fire. That's right.
Kind of an interesting thing. So we can't control the heat that much.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
They can.
Oh, they can control the heat.
And you'll notice, like, even when I moved it just a little, like some of them are soft over here and over there, but we're just gonna kind of leave it now for a second.
Guys, while we're pausing and letting it do, I just want to bring your attention to something. So Anthony Rose often cooks in my house. We go up to my farm and we cook and all this stuff. And what he often does, at the end of the weekend, I end up throwing away most of the stuff that he uses. So you'll notice he leaves the wooden spoon on the thing, and by the end of the weekend, the wooden spoon is burnt. Or
cracked in half.
or cracked in half. Or remember the first pan that you cooked? We decided to put the whole pan in the oven.
Like you're doing right now?
Well, you put it in the fire, and I had to throw away the pan at the end. Anthony Rose.
So, Rob, if you could
See,
pass
do
me
it
the
again.
steaks
See
now.
this burn right here? That's Anthony Rose. Oh, steaks. Yes.
Marty, aren't you so happy you didn't do this?
Yeah. What are you gonna do now? Did you snort?
Yeah. We're gonna season the steaks now. A little bit of salt and pepper on each side. Marty, did you have a question? Anyone?
Hold on one second. Marnie, do you have a question? Wait, hold on. Wait. Hold on. Let me turn the camera around.
I was just gonna ask,
There we go.
because these are kosher steaks, how much salt is too much salt?
What does kosher have to do with anything?
Because they're severely salted when the meat is killed. So often I don't add additional salt to kosher steaks or too much salt. So I'm just wondering.
I don't know that that's 100% correct. As far as I was concerned, the koshering process is my grandmother would have salted everything overnight before she cooked it. As far as I know from Nebraska with the koshering process, these haven't been salted ahead of time.
Okay.
So that might be something that we should look into. We're going to put a little bit of salt on both sides, but not a lot, because we're going to finish with a little bit of salt as well.
Very coarse salt.
And it's very coarse salt. So it's
I
actually,
mean, if you just have some kosher salt to it on, you could use that.
if you had some kosher
It's more
salt,
like a finishing salt.
Yeah.
In many ways.
we'll
But
figure
it's
it out.
okay.
when we
We're
get there.
welcome. We're not going to complain. We're happy.
And then we're going to come back to the mushrooms,
Oh, we forgot about those.
and then we're just going to kind of stir them around.
There's a whole thing, a discussion about pre-salting meat, like on that salt, fat, acid, heat book that I just read.
Right.
I'm obsessed with. She salts her meat the night before because she thinks it absorbs right in there.
One of my food heroes is Judy Rogers, and she owns Oliver Shulam, by the
Yeah.
way. She owns a restaurant in San Francisco called Zuni Cafe, and she's a huge proponent of salting overnight as well, just like my grandmother would have been.
Because if you salt at the end, you're tasting the salt, whereas if you absorb it.
That's
But
right.
you're not a big fan of salting meat beforehand, I've noticed. Well, it depends. Like if
Well,
you're
you know,
roasting-
it also very much depends on the meat. I mean, from what I understand, this kosher meat is some of the finest we've ever had. So it is nice to actually just to be able to taste the meat for what it is.
Taste the meat.
So you can see the mushrooms right now are kind of like, should be kind of like loosely kind of sauteed. There should be like a little bit of caramelization on some of the shallots. If you have more, that's fine. If you have less, that's fine. Because we're going to add like a little bit of liquid to the pan shortly as well.
I'd like to just give a shout out to Ethan at this point. He's sitting here for like a half an hour filming us. Thank you, Ethan. Big shout out to Ethan, right? Yeah.
After this comes off, can we get anything other?
Yeah. More heat. Yeah. We're gonna add a little bit more to the burner.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do that.
So you at home can just turn up your saute pan, but
We're gonna put more coal.
here we need a little more action, a little more charcoal. Oh my God.
I love doing this.
Yeah.
Marnie, you getting ideas?
Marty, have you sold this yet?
Yeah. Come on, Marnie. Is that not bad? More?
Best Static is trying to sign us very quickly.
Yeah, we should sign on with that setting
Yeah.
for sure.
for the high holidays next year. They're very impressed. All right. So what you can do at this point, you have like a little spoon.
Look at this. You getting this? What is
You have it like a little spoon. You can just kind of.
Wow, these pecans are just not ready.
What I do like about this salt is that you can really taste it. So we've got the mushrooms in there. Everything's sauteed together.
Very hot.
It doesn't have to be caramelized or anything. We got like a nice sizzle on the pan right now. We're gonna do two things. One, we're gonna add all of the chopped thyme, not the thyme stems, but some of the chopped thyme. And then very quickly after that, we're gonna add the whiskey to the pan.
Is this the whiskey?
No.
No, that's the olive oil.
We're gonna add the whiskey to the pan.
Why don't you taste it first? Check. Smell it.
No, this is the brandy, right?
Brandy.
Right. We're gonna add the brandy to the pan.
Bring it in. Get the super. Get the super.
Oh.
Need more? Is enough fire?
So you're just gonna bring that down to what we like to call in the business AUSEC, AUSEC, which means that it's almost all reduced. Remember, we're not looking necessarily for like a sauce here. We're looking for like a garnish. My grandmother, I said the word fricassee before. My grandmother cooked her fricassee. Her fricassee involves meatballs and chicken kidneys and chicken livers and chicken feet and like some sort of tomato sauce. But in the French term, a fricassee is just like a light saute of vegetables. And that's what we're kind of looking for here. So as you can see in like a nice hot pan,
It's all absorbed.
the liquid's almost gone.
It's
The
gone.
mushrooms are just kind of like eating that up completely.
Amazing.
So we're gonna take this off right now and we're just gonna let it sit on the side until we're ready for it. We're just gonna keep it warm.
So, but Anthony, hold on just one second. You have a big thing in the restaurant where you always say to the chefs, you got to taste what you're cooking.
Oh, you have to taste
You
everything.
have to taste
all the time.
everything while you're cooking it. So it might need a little more salt. It might need a little bit more something.
Yeah.
So make
And
sure you
that's
give
with
it a little
the building blocks as well.
How
We
much
seasoned it.
spoons to taste?
We seasoned it at the beginning. We seasoned it in the middle, and then I just tasted it. And actually, I said like you can really taste the salt. So I'm not going to season it
Can I have a
again.
spoon and taste it? One that you didn't use? One
Um,
over there. Oh my God.
So we're just if you can just put that on the top of the oven over there.
You're
Did I miss anything about the rosemary?
About the what?
The rosemary.
The thyme?
Was it just thyme or is there rosemary? It's just thyme.
I do not have rosemary.
Okay, okay. That's why I didn't understand. Did you put thyme into the mushrooms that I missed?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I'm sorry. Before the whiskey, you put the top thyme on. Right at the end is fine now. You can put it right at the end. We want to keep the flavor of the mushrooms and the flavor of the thyme very fresh. That's why I put usually all my chopped herbs right at the end. Let's get a little more. So, why
If
would
everyone
I
can go on mute to avoid the echo.
Whoever's got their mic on needs to mute.
Yeah, that big one.
Okay. All right. No, the big one's gonna be too smoky. Okay, a little more heat.
So now what we're gonna do, guys, we're gonna get ready to cook the steaks. Now, as we're cooking the steaks, we've got that pan that was in the oven.
Anthony, I just want to make note for a second. This is really still cooking away on top of something that's very hot. Do you want that happening?
Maybe just put it next to Ethan then.
What?
Just put it next to Ethan over there.
Awesome. All right. So you want the pan?
So you're gonna take the pan that was in the oven. Either in the oven, and I know some of you had a handle that couldn't go on the oven or go in the oven because it would have melted. So then you're gonna take that pan and put it on a high heat on the stove.
This pan is smoking hot right now. Okay.
These steaks are nice and marbled. We are going to add a little bit of olive oil to the pan, but not too much. Rib steaks, by definition of where they come from on the animal, have like a nice amount of fat in them too, which is really good.
Less water?
So we've seasoned them with pepper, a little bit of salt, but we're going to season them later with a little bit of salt as well. We've got the pan over here, which is nice and hot. And we're now going to add some olive oil to that pan. Ethan, get up nice and tight.
Yeah, sorry. He's just getting a call.
Who is it?
All right.
That was some of the bourbon or the brandy that was on the bottom of there.
Wow,
Kind of
look,
getting a
it's
nice
right
sizzle
on
in
the
it.
rock.
Oh, that's a leak. And then if you can kind of watch me for a second, I like to, when I'm putting anything into the saute pan like that, I kind of point it away from me. That way the oil is gonna kind of pool on the other side. And when I put it in the pan, I put one tip in the oil. That way I'm not splattering the oil on myself. Smart, I never knew that. Very smart. You want me to take that? And then we're just gonna, we're just gonna let the steaks sit there in the oil and get a nice crust on them. A caramelization for that matter. One of the most common mistakes when you're cooking a steak or a piece of meat on the grill is that you move it too much. So I want to ask Anthony a question. How long does it take to cook a steak? Because people have theories. They say, oh, cook it 5 minutes on one side, 5 minutes on another side, 2 minutes on the other side, and you have the perfect steak. So I would say to him, how long does it take to cook a steak? And in his true Yiddish Vorspelt response, what did you say? Until it's done. Or you say, it depends on the size of the steak. No, I think I said until it's done. So two things. Number one, you do not want to move the steak. However, you can see in the pan over here that some of the oil is kind of congregating on this side. So you can move the pan. Even in my house, I don't know if it's the house that's lopsided or the pan that's lopsided. It happens the same way. So I move the pan. I don't necessarily move the actual steak in there. What we're looking for now is a deep crust, a deep caramelization. This is called the Maillard effect. M-A-L-L-A-R-D. It's from Dr. Maillard in France. So much French tonight. Oh. Can you get a little flashlight? It's hard. It's kind of, well, where's your phone? Oh. Yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. So I can actually see on this side over here, there is some caramelization going on. And if I kind of sneak a peek, I know that I'm not quite there yet.
Yeah, can you set the camera?
No. We'll do it on this side. Sneak a peek. You can kind of sneak a peek, but not too much of a peek. Not quite. However, with the size of the steak and with the size of the pan, I know we got a nice strong sizzle. I personally like my rib steaks. The older I get, the more well done. So to me, and this isn't very chef-like, I like my rib steaks medium to medium well. And the reason for that is because it does have a lot of fat in there. And I find I like my fat cooked a little longer and a little deeper. With something like a filet, with something like a strip loin, not kosher for Pesach, by the way, so of course I don't eat it, but I have to cook it for the guests. I do cook those a little less, medium rare to rare, because there's much less fat in it. Can I just picture Halo? Hold on. Oh my God. Look at that, Ethan. Did you get that? Unbelievable. Ethan has started cooking. Very good cook. Very good chef. First year of college.
It's my second year of college.
Second year of college, sorry. Making lots of gorgeous stuff. Wow, that is way more crusted than I thought you would do. Really? No, not you, but at home. I think people often flip it too fast. They definitely flip it too fast. You only cook and they flip it too much as well. So you only cook it on one side and the other side? You go back to the other side? No, never. One side and the other side. Right. I wasn't keeping tabs, but I feel like the first side was like a minute and a half. I think it was a little longer. Yeah? Yeah. Just in steak. Oh, look at you. What are you doing there? I'm feeling for doneness. It's probably close to rare, mid-rare right now, so I'm gonna go a little longer. So what I've learned is that I'm gonna just kind of flip this pan a little as well. Squeeze your fish like this. This is well done. Poke there. And this is medium. What do you think? Sorry, guys. Sorry. It's COVID. He hasn't gone on a date in 3 months. When the steaks come off, we're going to let them rest for about 3 minutes. We're going to get the mushrooms warm again. And as they're kind of resting, or right before they come off, we're just going to take this thyme. There's a thyme. The thyme stem. We're just going to kind of put them in the pan just like that. Beautiful. It smells so good. You can kind of smell it. Yeah. This steak is a little thinner, so we're going to take this steak off first. And it's got a little bit of caramelization on the bottom. Are you putting on that cold pan? You don't want it on wood? Nope. Okay. Sorry, Steph. Oh, look at that. And we'll have a couple different colors here anyway. So we'll take this one off as well. You see, I'm a lot younger than Anthony, so I like my steak quite rare. And then this thyme that was just kind of sitting in that oil, you don't necessarily want the oil, but we're just going to take that thyme and put it on top. What an artist. And just kind of let that rest with the steak. Can I move this down, please? Yeah. I'm going to turn this light off. Ah, brilliant. Can you see that, Ethan? Mm-hmm. You want more of the focaccia, Ethan? Oh my God. Isn't that beautiful? You want some light on that, Anthony? Yeah. You might want to put some let's put some light on that. You get a little bit of a, oh, hold on. What?
Anthony, one of the questions we have is how do you define a caramelization?
That's what I define as caramelization on the ends there. You can see it like all the way through. You can see that there's a little less caramelization on the inside, but that happens in general. Like all steaks are different. You can absolutely see this one was a little more caramelized on one side than the other side, but that's definitely because of the thickness of each one of the steaks as well. If this steak was like this thick, the whole side would have been caramelized because it would have been sitting there for like 5 minutes. Can I ask you a question, Anthony? Yes, Martin. I mean, Ross. So I actually have a couple questions. Firstly, why did you cook the steak in a pan and not right on the grill? We could have cooked it on the grill. When we were writing the recipe for tonight specifically, it was for people in their houses, so we did cook it. You don't have a preference? I do have a preference. I prefer something on a smoking hot cast iron pan. But same rules if I did it on this? Same rules if you did it on that. Well, you could. You wouldn't have the olive oil on there. Obviously.
Can you not caramelize it?
You could still caramelize it quite a bit. I prefer the cast iron because you can get more caramelization everywhere, personally. Okay. My second question. The steak is hot right now, but you're going to let it rest. Mm-hmm. Firstly, a two-part question. Why do you let it rest? And secondly, does it not get cold if you let it rest? It's going to get cold because we're outside. And no. Well, why do you let it rest? Can you put the mushrooms back? Oh, the mushrooms back over there. Take your phone. We let it rest because the juices, while you're cooking it, and the juices in the steak as it comes off are boiling inside because they're so hot from being on either the grill or on the cast iron. So all those boiling juices, if you slice into the steak right away, because there's so much movement between those juices and the molecules, they're just going to come right out of the steak. And that's juice that you're losing out of the steak. If you let it rest, all those juices are going to stop boiling and hence rest and stay inside the steak. Oh, good answer and a good question. So we're just going to get the mushrooms warm again. Anthony, I'm going to take out plates now and I'm going to warm them, okay? Ethan, I got you a plate here. So you can have some of this. We're just going to clean our cutting area. I'm going to put out plates right here and just warm them a bit.
So Rob, if you're at home and you don't have a warming drawer, how would you warm your plate at home?
Oh, that's very good. Well, I'm warming them on top of an oven, right? You can warm them in an oven at very low temperature. Yeah, that would be the best way. Wouldn't you say, Anthony? How else would you do it?
At the restaurant, we kind of will keep the plates in and around the stove or the oven or something like that. But for the most part, I think it's much more of a restaurant kind of trick than anything.
So at home, don't worry, in other words.
And at home, don't worry, in other words.
At home, don't worry, in other words. But we'll be putting outside, and it's going to be sad to put those beautiful Nebraska steaks on a cold plate.
Oh, okay, Rob,
Can you hear those?
if you could kind of take the plates out,
But they're not warm yet.
it's fun. You put them in the oven. The steaks are ready to cut. They're gonna get cold, so I want to.
But the plates will be hot, so you can they'll heat them up.
Nope.
Okay.
The mushrooms will heat up the
Okay.
plate. So if you put the plates out and put a little bit of mushrooms in the middle of each plate and just kind of a nice little pile.
Can I have one of those rags? Or you want me to use my big mitt? Okay. Do you want me to take these mushrooms? Oh my God! Can you smell those, Ethan?
Mm-hmm.
So the mushrooms don't go on top of the steak. The mushrooms go under the steak.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
That's right. Okay. So you're just gonna take some of that thyme right off of the top of the steak there. You don't need it anymore. You're just gonna get rid of it.
Do you notice how I'm biting my lip when I do this?
No.
That thing. My jam.
So Ethan, if you can get really nice and close, you might want to get some light on here.
All right, I got the light. I'm gonna be the light guy.
And we're just gonna talk about cutting or the anatomy of a rib steak. Kind of come up here, Rob.
Got it?
Yep. Is that good?
Is that
Ethan?
good, Ethan?
Yeah.
You getting audio? Check.
So with the rib steak, you can see that there's this nice kind of lean part that goes all the way through. And there's always this nice, beautiful piece over here, which is kind of like the beef cap, the rib cap. We're going to take that off, and I'll show you why towards the end. And depending on where it comes from on the actual whole rib plate, this is a much smaller one. Okay. So then, as we talked before, using the whole knife, you're going to kind of slide all the way through and back.
Look at that, medium rare. Just how you like it, eh? Sorry, my knife is a little dull.
A little dull. Gorgeous, right, Ethan?
Very. Now, don't be nervous at home if you don't have long fingers like Anthony. Just work with it.
You see this one's a little more cooked?
Because it's thinner.
A little thinner.
It's thinner.
We cooked it for just about the
Sorry,
same
that
amount
knife
of
is
time.
very dull. I really want to know about this rib cap.
Oh, good. Make sure these are a little closer.
Question.
Yes,
I've-
Marty.
How long should you really be letting, I just wasn't seeing the timing, but is there like a good timing about how long you should let a steak rest?
You know what? It really depends on the size of the steak. It really depends on, like, we're outside, so the cold kind of made it rest a little faster. Something like this, if you would do like 2 or 3 minutes, it's fine. You're always going to get a little bit of juice that comes out. You just don't want to slice into a steak that is freshly off the grill.
I love your plating. Look at you.
Thank you.
Marnie, do you have any questions?
Wait,
How perfect
wait,
my steak is.
wait, here, show again.
I'm just looking at how perfect my steak is.
Steven said that you needed lessons on cooking
Phone's
steak.
on 20%.
It's okay.
Yeah, he's putting on, yeah.
So with this piece over here, there's
Yeah.
something in the business that you would call like the chef's kiss or kind of the butcher's treat. To me, this is that piece there. kind of like little fatty, delicious, great marbling all the way through. And that way everyone gets a piece.
Very generous.
One of my favorite parts of the steak right there.
Can we have a... Beautiful. Did you put a little salt in that after? Or... Thanks for ruining my rag like that. Yeah, no problem.
So you can put a little bit of salt right on top because it's a nice finishing salt. But you'll notice, like, I didn't actually use a lot of salt in the seasoning of the steak at all. The steak is actually quite spectacular.
Unbelievable.
I actually noticed, I mean, obviously, I don't have kosher restaurants, but I think within the restaurant industry, when you order in kosher for a variety of guests, I've never seen quality like this bag that we got today. So thank you very much for not only the amazing products, but for showing me that this gorgeous Nebraska steak is kosher for Pesach as well. Guys, does anyone have any questions for me? And how is everyone's steak turning out?
Delish.
Where's the cutlery?
And for anybody, we encourage you to take pictures of your dinner, send it to us. If you post it on Facebook or on Instagram, by all means, please tag CAFTAU. We're on there. We'd love to see whatever pictures you guys have.
Well, this is delicious. Thank you for buying us dinner, guys.
Well, Stephen, should we move?
Yeah. What? 1 sec. All right.
Can we flip it around?
I want to see people's steak. How do I do that?
There you go. Here, hold on. I'm going to remove the spot. Okay.
Oh my God, look at the steak there. Who is Marnie? Did you cook that?
I sure did, babe.
Oh, Marnie.
Holy moly, that is beautiful. Where are your girls? They're so much interesting than you guys.
Do I get hired now for the restaurant?
Wow, that is gorgeous. Let me see Colin's steak.
Well, I've just got a whole bunch of whiskey here. I'm gonna go. I'm running out to the store to get a steak right away. I'm doing that tonight.
It's early for Colin.
Yeah, let me see more steak. Let me see more steak. Who else? Show me.
Here's mine.
Wow.
Whoa,
Oh, beautiful.
guys, this is such a mitzvah. I love this.
I don't normally like mushrooms.
Ethan doesn't like mushrooms at all,
But he's
and he's killing this.
I'm never eat my mushrooms. Me and our professional chef.
And are you guys eating now? How's everything taste?
Delish.
Okay.
How many people on this call?
We're eating.
There's about 38 people, so there's about 50 people enjoying their steak now. Stephen, do we move on to the drinking part?
Well, I don't know about you, but I never stopped drinking. But yes, I think now's a good time, and I just want to again just say thank you very much to Anthony and Rob for, I know that these are busy days and chaotic days for both of you, and to have both of you take a night out and spend it with us is very much appreciated. You guys have always been good friends to us at TAU and to me and Marn personally. So again, thank you guys. We are very, very grateful. Thank you.
It's our great pleasure. And you know what they always say, Stephen? Next year in Tel Aviv.
Amen.
Amen.
And Anthony and Rob, you had an idea of having a kosher restaurant, so we welcome that. While everyone is enjoying their caramelized and marbleized steak, I did find a picture of the steak that is printed with a 3D printer at Tel Aviv University. So compare that steak to what you're eating now. So thanks to everyone's support, the progress on the printed steak at Tel Aviv University will advance considerably. We're truly thankful. Thank you so much. It's fantastic. I really look forward.
Amazing. Thanks for having us.
Really,
Anything for Marnie. Anything for Marnie.
All the best. Please be safe. And now we're going to, you're welcome, obviously, to stay with us as we migrate to the next part of the evening from the best home office we've seen during the whole pandemic. Colin MacDougall's office, who is going to share with us the treats of whiskey to go with our steak. Colin, over to you in our BC studio.
Wonderful. So yeah, to Stephen's point earlier there, yeah, this is a truly national program today. I'm tuning in from Vancouver, BC here to join all of you. That was incredible. I was glued to the screen watching the preparation of that steak, and dinner is fast approaching for me, and I am looking forward to replicating that. So thank you so much, gents, for such a great presentation. I definitely learned a few things, and that was, yeah, that was really, I hope everybody else took away as much from that as I did. So moving into my portion here, I mean, hopefully everybody's just finishing up the final touches, or you're getting this this great meal in front of you. So what I wanted to do this evening is just bring you through maybe just like a little bit of a story of Canadian history and Canadian whiskey, and then touch on a few marks here that we have. So we have the J.P. Wiser's Triple Barrel, the J.P. Wiser's 15-year-old. And then also, maybe before I get too far ahead of myself, I just want to touch on maybe at this point, because I did open it up, I started with the Manhattan. I poured a little bit of the Manhattan. As soon as I got that down to the bottom, I went over to the Old Fashioned. And I'm wondering if anybody has gone between the two and if they have any feedback on them.
So, Colin, I know that there was a question about the ingredients that go into each.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you have the bottle, it's already easy to pour. But if somebody wants to make these at home, how do you make a Manhattan? How do you make an Old Fashioned?
Yeah. So, I mean, and this is great. I mean, when we talk about, you know, just cocktails and the word cocktail and where it originates from, it originates originally the way back in the 1800s. It was as lore has it, an American invention, and the essentially like the Old Fashioned as we have here. An Old Fashioned cocktail is by definition in print in the early 1800s is something that is a spirit base. It has bitters that's been added to it, and then usually some form of sugar. And so what you're really doing when you're creating an Old Fashioned, and imagine the landscape of North America back then as well. The alcohol that was being produced was not even near, the worst whiskey that you can buy today would probably be in the top 10 of what was going on back in the 1800s. So the reason the Old Fashioned existed was because it was a way of making something greater than the sum of its parts. You take some sugar, which would you'd create some sort of simple syrup is just 1-to-1 sugar to water, fully diluted with no particulate. You'd add a little bit of that sugar to that, let's call it whiskey for the sake of this story, because it could also be brandy. It could also be, a crude rum. But at this point, you're adding a bit of sugar to add some sweetness and to make this more palatable. When you add sugar to things, as we know, like when you're looking at ingredients, it's that one thing that helps things sell. And we're at this point now with our society where we're trying to pull back on that. So for me personally, when I make Old Fashions, instead of like a half ounce like you might get at a restaurant, I'm using maybe like an 1/8 of an ounce. But that's to me as well. I'm the type of person that drinks a coffee black. But if we get past that, the next thing that you're adding is something called bitters. So bitters are by definition really concentrated flavor. So you've got here, I've got to me the biggest main examples here. Angostura is the one that you find on every grocery store shelf. This is the big one, and this is the one that is kind of the industry standard. If you go to a place and they have bitters, it's Angostura bitters, 9 times out of 10. Something like Peychaud's. Antoine Peychaud was a Haitian who came over to essentially modern day New Orleans and set up an apothecary of sorts and became basically a pharmacist of sorts back in the day. And then at night he'd host his parties and he'd find ways to mix these really fun and interesting cocktails together to make something. So that is at its core, what an old fashioned is. When we're making an old fashioned at home, we're taking and let's stick in my world here tonight. We're taking 2 ounces of whiskey. We're taking a simple syrup, and simple syrup again is like equal parts 1 to 1 water with sugar. I like to use brown sugar personally because I like the molasses and other things that lend to that. But you're bringing those together. You're stirring them fully mixing them. But of that mixture that you make, and again, this is another step that you have to do if you're doing this at home. And this is kind of leading into my why this is so much easier to have these just pre-made for you. You're making that simple syrup. You add like, a quarter to a half ounce, and really like with the steak and with salting something, it comes down to personal preference once you really get into it. But then you're adding 2 or 3 dashes of bitters. You're using a mixing jar like this with ice. If you could imagine, we're pouring in the whiskey, a couple dashes of bitters. With these guys, they have the little dasher tops. You're going boom, boom. You're adding in your sugar. You're stirring. To get that dilution, what you're really trying to do is to soften the whiskey, and you're trying to add the water. When I do big events now, I'll actually add the water into a bottle, keep it in the fridge, and then I'll pour the whole complete product right in. So, there's a lot of, when you break down exactly what an old fashioned is, you can really start to work on the science of it, and tying into this printed steak. That was really impressive. It's so impressive that that we're at that point now. I thought we were still a couple of years away of even accomplishing anything near that. But I mean, that is essentially what an old fashioned is. That's the story of it. As we move forward in history, getting closer to the 1900s, we get things like sweet vermouth, which is traditionally like the first forms of it. Now it's made everywhere, but Italy was basically the major producer of it. So Italy's importing red vermouth made from red grapes. We call it sweet vermouth, we call it red vermouth. There's a bunch of different names for it, but the red one, not the white one, or the clear one, which traditionally was France was kind of owning that. And so the Manhattan was the same idea, the same realm, but you're adding 2 ounces of your whiskey to 1 ounce essentially of your sweet vermouth, and then adding some bitters. Now the difference, and you may have noticed this in your glass if you have had these side by side, is that the Manhattan's significantly drier. There is actually, we call it sweet vermouth, but relatively speaking, the sugar content in like that sweet vermouth is so light. And that's why a lot of people who, are, if you're kind of going back and forth, which one's better? Do you like the old fashioned or the Manhattan? A lot of people will go towards your Manhattan because there is less sugar. And it is a little, like to me, like if you're drinking it, it goes down a little easier. Did anybody, just out of curiosity, I know we had a couple people that poured a little bit of the old fashioned, a little bit of the Manhattan. Did anybody notice that sweetness, that difference there? Yeah, I'm seeing a couple thumbs up there. Yeah. And so for me, like this can come down to personal preference. Like, if I'm out and I'm getting a coffee, I said that before, I'm at the point now where I'm trying to get like really great coffee, and I'm just drinking it black. I'm not doing milk or sugar. So my palate is just gradually, and I'm personally, my palate's gotten gradually drier and drier and drier over time. So for me, I've gone more and more towards these old Manhattans. And it's, but it really, it comes down to like that old fashioned. I haven't had that in like, honestly, maybe 3 or 4 months. And as soon as I poured that top up, I was like, wow, like that is really impressive. If you're in a restaurant, you may notice that somebody's actually going to take a little strip of an orange. So they're just peeling off the skin of that orange, and then they're going to crack that orange on top of it. Well, with the JP Weiser's Old Fashioned, if you read the back of it, and I'm not sure if on those minis we have it, but if you read the back of it, we actually have added the orange oil. So that's one less step that you don't have to worry about with the JP Weiser's Old Fashioned. The essence, the oil, has actually been added into the liquid. So you don't even have to do that last garnish, if you will, of that orange and get into it. So yeah, the breakdown of those two, if we're going to make those drinks, and I'd be more than happy to maybe after this, what I can do is share a video to Stephen to just send off to the group, and I'll just I actually have them already made of how to make an old fashioned, how to make a Manhattan. The purpose of tonight, and really showing off how versatile these are. These are, all the work is done on our end for you. All the bitters are in for the old fashioned, all the sugar, the whiskey, everything's ready. Just pour it over ice. It's so easy, and just so. And that's what we're trying to convey. And another point too, with this old fashioned, with this Manhattan, there's the worry that if you're pre-batching something, how good is it going to be from actually doing it on your own. And so with us, we've chosen the vermouth, we've chosen the bitters, we've chosen the whiskey, obviously ours. If you're making these at home, you can actually play around with it. And for me, I find the old fashioned, for example, a little sweet for my palate. What I end up doing is putting a little bit of the triple barrel and the old fashioned together, so that I can kind of cut that sweetness level down and gets it exactly where, basically, if I'm making old fashions at home, that's where I'd have it. Does anybody have any questions on the old fashioned or the Manhattan there before I move into the whiskeys? Or did I explain that decently enough there? Okay, wonderful. So,
Triple barrel, Colin. When do I get to drink my triple barrel?
Triple barrel right now. Okay, let's crack open the triple barrel. What is a good story if I'm sitting here talking, but you're not enjoying a little whiskey during it, right? So let's open up that triple barrel. Let's crack that. Let's pour it in the glass. I've had mine. I've been staring at mine here for a little while. So, and then let me just touch on a really quick point here, because now that we're getting into actually tasting whiskeys, I think it's something that has come up quite a few times with me over the last few years. What is a lot of people are very, very defensive about adding ice to whiskey, adding water to whiskey, things of that nature. So I want to tell you a story about when I was working at a restaurant in downtown Vancouver. We had at that point the largest whiskey list in Western Canada. I think we had at that moment in time 160 different single malts alone. So it was a huge back bar, and somebody sits down at the bar, and this old guy, he had a very thick Scottish accent. And I was very taken aback. I'm like, all right, this guy, he's ordering really cool whiskeys. They all seem to be Talisker. I want to ask him what's going on. And it turns out he's the master distiller for Talisker. Has anybody heard of Talisker single malt Scotch whiskey?
Yes.
Wonderful. I mean, Talisker is one of those. I mean, if you're not, you look at Scotland, you look off there's a bunch of islands that kind of start to splay off of the west coast. And, down the bottom, you have Jura, Arran, Isla Island. And then as you go up Isla Skye, we get into these ones. So it's part of that grouping in Skye. And so long story short, though, I mean, his whiskey preferences and everything aside, he said something I thought was really insightful. And he said, because I straight up asked him, people come in here all the time and say, it's blasphemy to have water with whiskey, ice with whiskey. What's your take on it? You're the guy that I'm going to listen to. And he said, I'm not going to even though with a name like Colin MacDougall, I do not have a Scottish accent. I'm not going to try. But he basically said, there's a couple schools of thought. When I'm trying a whiskey for the first time, I want to try it the way that everybody else in the world who tries it is going to try it. So I want to try it, no ice, no water. I want to see everybody's impression. And I want to know what the distillery put it out at, because there's an ABV. You're going to notice on these ones here, the triple barrel's at 43.4. The 15-year-old set at 40. Let's make sure I'm getting that right. Yeah. We have so many, as you can see, it's tough to keep track of sometimes. But he said that's kind of the rundown, and I hope everybody's with me in your because I think it's an important point. Then he said, now that's how I'm gonna calibrate it to the way that everybody else is tasting it. When I'm actually going to go in and start to really learn the whiskey, I start adding water to it to bring it down to a level playing field. If I have a cask strength lot 40, 57% ABV. You're not gonna, if you really want to learn the flavors, you're going to add some water to bring it down closer to 40%, so that you're going to be able to taste less of the wood notes and more of the fruit. So, when alcohol gets down to a certain level, and you can start to gauge them at the same point. It comes down, and really honestly what it comes down to, and I know I'm rambling here a little bit, but it comes down to personal preference. And so in the middle of summer, when, I finished a golf game and I've gotten home, do I want to drink? I'm dehydrated. Do I want to drink a whiskey neat? No. In the middle of summer, when it's, God willing, it's, maybe it's like 25 degrees here in Vancouver as a high. I'm going to add some ice to it. I'm going to enjoy it like that. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I think that it's really, because a lot of times people sometimes hear people say that, it's really inappropriate to drink whiskey different ways. So I'm not of that school of thought, and, master distillers and people who are at distilleries aren't that either. So let's get into it. So in front of you, segues in, add your ice, add your water, whatever you want to do. I actually have a little fun thing to show off. So JP Wiser's Triple Barrel, you have that green label in front of you. This is JP Wiser's Double Still Rye. This is actually the same thing as what you have in front of you. If we look back 3 years ago, I believe now, JP Wiser's started submitting their whiskey into international competition. We were very content to win Canadian awards, and to be fair, we've won quite a few. In fact, we've been dominating so much, and Dr. Don Livermore, who has a PhD in wood science and distilling, so we're actually, in a funny way, coming around full circle with the education and the science behind both Tel Aviv University and us here. But what we started doing is instead of being content to just be Canadian, and I think as Canadians in general, we're very shy. We don't really celebrate our wins when we win. We sent this off. This came off on the shelves 2-3 years ago as around $30 a bottle. And when you can find the triple barrel itself, it's still in that realm. And when this went into international competition, this actually won Best Rye of the Year. So we beat out all American ryes. We had this huge win. So it was funny. This sat on the shelves in Canada for a couple of years, and then we just didn't take to it. And to be fair, I think that the advertising of this double still rye, what this means is that in Canada, we use a column still and a pot still. Essentially, there's two different ways that you can make whiskey, and we do it a very unique way in Canada. Using two different machines to make, our spirits. If you're really familiar, I know I think I'm speaking to a very educated whiskey group here. So forgive me if I'm going into some details, but that's kind of the breakdown. We do two distillations. We use either pot, column pot, or column, depending on your distillery. And when this won though, this won an international award, we just didn't see it really move. So what JP Wiser's did, and we actually looked at ourselves and said, like, all right, how are we going to better explain this to people? Because when people are looking for premium, sometimes they're still skipping over the Canadian category. They're going I don't mind drinking JP Wiser's and ginger and Coca-Cola, but when it comes to premium, I'm going to go to a nice bourbon or a scotch. And it's holy crap, we actually sent this into as a blind tasting where somebody didn't know what they were tasting, and they rated this as one of the best whiskeys in the world. So how do we better advertise ourselves? And that's what it came down to here. And it was us showing off with the triple barrel. It's the same story. We've always used 3 barrels. So it is, if you're wondering, virgin oak barrels. So Quercus alba, white oak, North American virgin oak barrels. Never been used before. Think of a tea bag that goes into tea the first time. All the flavor. When you try to reuse that tea bag, and that's an ex-bourbon or ex-Canadian barrel, it still does the job that it has to do, but it offers almost a fifth of what you're trying to get from the barrel. So, and that's what the triple barrels offer you. So the other 2 barrels though are important because there's little imprints that go into them. So we're also using a Canadian whiskey mixing cask or an ex-Canadian barrel, if you really want to call it that. If we're shipping them down to the States, we call it an ex-Canadian barrel. The ex-bourbon barrels, when they come up, we call them ex-bourbon barrels, but it sounds kind of funny if you're reusing your own barrel in Canada, calling it an ex-Canadian barrel because it's still here. So we call them Canadian whiskey mixing casks. So that's what you've got here. The makeup of this, JP Wiser's triple barrel. So I've talked about, and I do want to shout from the mountaintops the awards here. So I talked about the first award that this won. the bottle that you have there this year won best export rye from Canada at the Canadian Whisky Awards. Thanks, Stephen. Boom. So this won an international award again this year, or an export award. So this is, and what you have here, the reason this is successful is that this is the blend of two things. This is the blend of corn and rye. Now, these are really the building blocks of Canadian whiskey. I brought lots of props here today to keep everybody involved. So corn and rye are the foundation. Now, when we're drinking Scotch whiskey, we're used to this, barley. Barley is legally the only thing you can use in single malt whiskey. In Canada, we're actually allowed to use, like the States, barley and wheat and corn and rye. So in Canada, we actually grow them all really well. And that's the reason. All the whiskey industry is a byproduct of the agriculture industry. What was lying around back in the day that wasn't purposed for food was distilled and used for whiskey. So, and as we've built and built and built and built this industry, farmers, instead of giving basically what was left over, have been contracted just to offer their grains to distilleries. When you look in Scotland and areas of Ireland, barley it grows there, it grows well, it's where it wants to be. But when you look into Canada, initially we were called a breadbasket during the 1800s and early 1900s, where wheat was planted across. It wasn't until the 1950s that we switched over to corn as a major cash crop for agriculture. And really, but that being said, rye is also, and when we talk about Canadian whiskey, we always talk about rye. Rye is a secondary crop. We make actually, and we produce so much less rye than corn or wheat for that matter. So just curious, anybody here today, Canadian whiskey, who would think that Canadian whiskey has to be at least 50% rye? Feel free to come up and mute me.
Is that malted rye, or is that like a dry cereal rye?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The maltsters, that intermediary process of malting it, creating that enzyme, getting a little 2-for-1 out of it. But you know what? Even both, if I was going to do a show of hands, I can see a few people in presentation mode. But when I took this job 4 years ago, if somebody said to me that Canadian whiskey is 50% rye at least, I would have raised my hand. And the truth is, we advertise ourselves as Canadian rye whiskey Canadian. And so what it comes down to is that rye is the most important ingredient. It's like the salt or the spice that you just added to your steak. It's the thing that really adds like the flavor and the punch. But what really is the heart and like the steak of what you just ate is corn. So grabbing your JP Weiser's triple barrel, and I'm sure we've been sipping on it here the entire time, but when you're smelling this, you're probably going to pick out some darker, richer. I mean, if you drink a lot of rye, if you drink a lot of, or if you drink any whiskeys, like something like our Weiser's 18-year-old is 100% corn. You'll notice that there's some very different flavors. And if you have a little sip here, what you're going to notice is that this particular whiskey is delivered a lot of sweet honeysuckle, really like to me right up front and right up front on the palate is just sweet, rich, and dense. And then on the sides of your tongue, if you're doing a little swirl, you're going to catch, especially when you blow out, you're going to start to feel that tingle on the sides of your tongue. And and that is the rye. When the little kind of drip going down, Dr. Don Livermore, our master blender, calls that the Canadian rye hug. And that's your spice, that's your rye. So corn is delivering it to you. In this particular one, for this group, I'll tell you, we don't usually offer that information up, but we're about 75% corn, 25% rye on this. So, and a lot of rye isn't necessarily better. It's just with this particular blend, especially when we export to some stuff to the States, we'll do at least 51% rye. Those ones aren't winning the awards. It's ones like this that are. So our blending team here in Walker definitely has proven that more is not always better like that. Anybody, so we've gotten in here, we've had a taste. Anybody have anything to, any notes you're pulling out? Anybody smell anything that's, that I haven't listed there?
A lot of
I'll
good.
throw out one thing. A lot of goodness, right? The thing about a sensory tasting that is really important to remember, and as you do more and more of them, like for me personally, like I've done certification for like whiskey tasting, spirit tasting, like you name it. As you get into more and more of these tasting groups, it's good to have like a Rolodex. Like I can share like a whiskey wheel that has all the flavor notes that you can pick out. But what it really comes down to as well, when you're tasting something, what have you been introduced to in your life? Like, what did you grow up with? What was the food that you were introduced to by your parents? What did they, for me, like growing up, I'm from Nova Scotia, like it was like blueberry pie, like, so for me, I've pulled out like blueberry crumble as a tasting note. And when I smell something, I'm just like, oh man, like that's blueberry crumble. Like that's got like that, and so sensory is really personal. And a lot of times I think there's a we want to say the right answer, right? Like we want to be like, oh, what is correct? But even like if you go on our website or you go on any website, that is someone who has lived a life, who has eaten food, who has given things, people love them, they took care of them, they gave them things and offered them flavors. And that's their impression. And so they can only, go back on their memories and their tastes. So if you have anything like that, like when you're doing these tastings, throw them out there. And I think the more personal, the better. For sure. And that's a great point to move on to another one. So before I do, anybody have a really fun, weird one? I would love to hear something.
So one question, maybe Colin.
Yeah.
For the first drinks, you were saying, no bad answer or no wrong answer as far as ice, no ice. I noticed for this, you're not, there is no ice. So is your recommendation that these drinks, the triple barrel, the 15 should be just enjoyed as they are?
I mean, yeah, like for the purpose of this one, and I envision quite a few people out there trying these neat. I use a Brita that I fill up my ice cubes with to try to keep my ice as neutral as possible. So for like my cocktail, I did that. But there's so many variables that can go into. For me, I'm trying to stay as connected to you as possible. I'm trying these neat. If you're at home, you're having this steak and you're being like, you're suffering. You're like, this is not fun. Throw some ice in there, right? Like the most important thing is to enjoy what you're drinking. So yeah, to answer your question kind of in two parts, definitely not a wrong way to do this. But if you really want to get into exactly what's going on here, arguably, if you have it neat, you're maybe going to get, you're going to pull up on those things or those things are come to the forefront a bit quicker. The one thing that is true, like just to, from an experience point of view, for sure, it's how you want it. When you do add ice to something, it cools it down. It does tighten notes that are there that normally would jump out at you. So certain things like wood notes will get a little denser. And if you're smelling something, it's going to be kind of a little more hidden. On the palate, it's going to hide a little bit more because the water and the cool water is going to like slow things down for you. So yeah, and it goes back to that story of the master distiller from Talisker. If I want to experience it for the first time, I want to have it neat, room temperature, so I can really pull everything out. Unfortunately, at 43.4% and at 40% ABV, these aren't too hot. They're not too high that they need to be diluted. But that being said, if I'm, when we leave each other, if I'm pouring myself a dram of this, I'm probably pouring it over ice. I'm probably just relaxing. I like that ritual personally. Yeah, for sure. So moving into keeping it charged online. And any other questions? I hope I answered that right, or to what you were thinking there, Stephen.
I have another question. it's a bit esoteric, but you know, I know that most whiskeys use malted barley. Maybe 10% is malted barley, and the rest is, you know, a mixture of different grains. The Wisers, the JP Wisers, what is the enzyme they use? What is, do they use corn? Do they use rye? Do they, you know?
Yeah, so I'll answer your question so it depends on the country, right? So when we're in Ireland, for example, whether it's Bushmills, Jameson, they're using corn from France. They call it maize. They're bringing in corn from France as their heart, double column distilling it, and then they're adding malted barley to it. And then so that's the makeup of it. When you're up in Scotland, there's 3 different real basic definitions. There's single malted barley, which is really single malt. That's where they're getting the barley, they're malting it, that process to stimulate the fermentation. Basically, you know, it's how you used to make alcohol. And so I think that's going to answer your question there. Like, and really to just jump ahead for a second, what we've done is proprietary enzymes have been picked out that can be added to a wash of something to stimulate a fermentation. So we for like something like lot 40. This is about to hit your shelf soon. This is called the Dark Oak, and this is going to be on the shelves, I think, in January, February for everybody here in Ontario. But really, and what I think you're asking me is that dry grains from the North Shore of Lake Erie. So those rye stalks are cut down. The seeds are liberated. They're brought to the distillery. They don't go to somebody who malts them. So when you malt them, you know, you start that germination process, which is going to release the enzyme. And then you're going to be able to, when you add that to a wash, the yeast are going to interact with it. Then they're actually going to do their thing. They're going to make beer. So they're going to make a rye beer, which you can then distill and cherry pick the alcohol, which was created from that process. With us, what we can do is we can actually bring in 100% just the seeds. They come into the distillery. So the little guys here, and I got a little one here, right? This is exactly what comes in the backs of these trucks. So if it's rye in that case, they come in, they go through this little, almost like a pressure cooker. It's like super intense, high heat. As they're flowing through, it cracks the seeds open so that they're more susceptible to the next process. So it's just like, you know, almost like muddling, like when you're cracking that, you had that garlic, when you pressed it, you just opened it up and made it more open. You're opening it to the elements, goes into the tank. And then we actually have an enzyme. So, and this is where it can be confusing, is that if that rye, and we do malted rye is somewhat easier to work with. It gets really gunky and gets sticky, but the process of fermentation is way easier, right? What we're doing is, like, during adding the water, adding the grain, we're actually pouring in the enzyme, which we've picked out and then added in. That's going to start that process of fermentation, so that when the yeast is in there, the yeast is going to be able to start chewing around. And that enzyme is going to basically take those starches, which are like the size of like baseballs, and bring them down into really super small bites, so those yeast can eat them and create alcohol and carbon dioxide. So to answer your question really fully, like in the landscape of the current industry, we've come so much farther forward that we no longer need to have malted grain. You can actually have dry grain in which you add the enzyme. And again, when you malt something, you know, you basically have a starchy grain, an endosperm, and it basically breaks open. The seed's about to grow, and that's a thing that's been created by nature to give that little seed, you know, a really good go at life right out of the gate. It starts giving it energy. And when we malt something, we just halt the process, so we don't let that seedling grow into a full plant. We just cut it off, and then you've got, you know, the starch, you've got the enzyme. So I think that's what you're asking. I hope that's what you're asking.
Yeah, that was a very, very good answer.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And so, I mean, and when it comes down to it, I mean, like all of your single malt whiskeys, you know, if they have single malt on them, they're 100% barley, but they're also 100% malted barley. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. That's their legal regulation. In Canada, we're actually allowed to use malted or unmalted corn, malted or unmalted rye, malted or unmalted barley, malted or unmalted wheat. I'm going to pull one down from my wall here. Gooderham and Worts is a brand. It's actually it's the heart of Ontario. It was the largest distillery in the world at the turn of the 18 to 1900s, and this is a brand it's scaled back a little bit, but it's the hometown hero of Toronto, and this is the one Canadian whiskey that you get all 4 grains malted and malted in. Generally speaking, whether, I'll just step outside of myself, where this Canadian Club, Gibson's, 40 Creek, JP Wiser's, we're using corn as a base, and we're adding rye into it to give it some spice. So I'll jump into the JP Wiser's 15, if everybody's still with me here.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Colin.
Awesome. Okay. And I took the liberty of bringing out kind of the gambit, if you will, of these. And so I'll just give you a little closer look here. So this is really what we're dealing with in Canada now.
I'm all confused. Where's my 15?
You're sorry?
I don't see a 15, 22, 23, 35 in my little bottles.
You should have your 15. You should have the one there. But yeah, if I could have shipped minis of all these, I would have. I promise you.
Stephen, I'm disappointed and confused, everything.
Don't worry. Next year, when we inaugurate the Perlis family chair, I promise you we will only serve the JP Wiser 35.
I'll put aside bottles now, Stephen. All right.
Yeah, 100%. He's good for it. Never once reneged on anything. It's all good.
Yeah. So what we've got, and what we have, and what this really came down to, working with Stephen, we're trying to give you minis that we have that existed, and looking through the distillery, they're few and far between. Like having the 15 on hand, I was so excited to share this one with you. This won an award last year as gold, and showing you the landscape here. I have them all out because these ones here are limited runs. 22, 23, 35-year-old are limited runs of JP Wiser's. Ones like the 15 and the 18 are ones that are still available like full-time on shelf. And what you're getting, they're all completely different. And it's something that I've actually brought up to our team. You might get the assumption, like and with single malt whiskeys, the only thing they can do, because they make one thing, they make a spirit. So let's take Glenlivet, for example, right? Single malt Scotch whiskey. Glenlivet makes one thing. It comes off the still and it's the exact same liquid. All they do is alter it with time and with different barrels. So what I mean to say is, they malt barley, they create a product, and whatever's coming off that juice, that liquid is exactly the same. Now, when I'm looking at these here, JP Wiser's 18, I alluded to already before, is 100% corn whiskey. It's aged in ex-bourbon barrels, or ex-Canadian barrels, sorry. And it's aged for 18 years. That manipulates it. The more temperature swings and things that happen over time, that's what really gives complexity to a whiskey. Something like the 22-year-old, this is a blend of corn and rye, which has been put into a port barrel, and this is getting more into the Scotch track. But 15-year-old here, what you have is a blend, essentially, of, if we really break it down, of majority corn, let's call it 91% corn, and then 9% rye. Now, the reason for that decision is because rye is a bully. When you have rye in a whiskey, what it tries to do is take over the flavor and become like the biggest thing you can hear and taste in that whiskey. And if we make something like JP Wiser's 15-year-old, so these whiskeys have been laid down in Ontario, in Windsor, Ontario, and they've been resting for 15 years. They've been sitting. When we blend these together, if it was any more than like the 9% rye that we're looking at, we're not going to be able to taste those attributes of the corn. And so we talk about in Canada of being master blenders. We say we're and we actually, in the early 1900s, went over to Scotland to set up blending facilities for the blended Scotch whiskey production. And so we really know what we're doing. But with something like JP Wiser's 15 with this here, what you're tasting, what you're smelling let's all get into that, have a little taste, have a little smell. If you've already drank it, try to remember it.
Very smooth.
But very smooth, yeah. Where the triple barrel maybe is a little bit more, I call it youthful. You know, like there's spicy rye, it's jumping out at you. The JP Wiser's 15 is more about elegance. This is blending. This is also one of the expressions that Dr. Don Livermore created. So this is one of his legacy expressions that he is, I want to say, like, you know, going up there in like the you know, double digits of the person who's at the helm of this here in Walker Distillery, started in 1857. He's the person currently making expressions. This is one of the ones that Dr. Don Livermore came out with. So if you really want to taste Dr. Don Livermore's palate, this is what he thought people are going to like out there. This is what he thought, you know, our corn and our rye brought together made the best whiskey. And at 15 years as well, you know, like that's even another element. Like if it's a 10-year-old corn and rye, it's going to behave differently than a 15-year-old corn and rye. So this is, you know, 100% Canadian grains. This is what's growing in Canada, the farmers, what they're growing. We have 5th and 6th generation contracts with them, bringing us grain, us acquiring that grain, fermenting it, distilling it, somebody doing their best to distill this whiskey, us laying it down in Pike Creek, which is a, you know, a sleepy town. If anybody knows Windsor, Ontario, and you keep going up towards Lac Saint Eau Claire, against the Detroit River, in behind there, we have 1.6 million barrels sitting. That's a big number. That's the equivalent of, if you looked at a hockey rink, that is 134 hockey rinks stacked 6 high with 200-liter barrels. So yeah, imagine like the Maple Leafs rink and line 134 of those lined up 6 high. So we've got a lot of whiskey sitting there. But once that journey's done, this all comes together 15 years later. Dr. Don Livermore gets to taste and smell this. There's a panelist of people that also, you know, they get together, they agree, they disagree, and Dr. Don is like the last, you know, final word on things. And eventually we end up with something like this. I'll throw it out to you as well. If you're able to try the 18-year-old next to the 15, the 18-year-old is significantly lighter because it's 100% corn. You know, this is just really, really super elegant and light. The 15-year-old, with that rye that's added in, the intention there is to try to give a little punch, as much as a 15-year-old punch can be. That's really, like, you know, in whiskey years, that's getting pretty old. A lot of like the fire has been taken out of it. But that's the intention with it. So having them side by side, if you took my recommendation, I think even just smelling, the 15-year-old is like, if we have wine people here, this is a Pinot Noir and this is a Cab Sauv. What do you think about that?
We don't have the 18.
I don't even
no,
have the 15. I don't even have the 15.
I have
Did
the
I say
15.
15?
I blame Mark.
Some of us have the 15, but
we delivered in bulk. Someone else packed.
No, we all.
Do most people have the 15?
I'll make Alan whole with the 15. Don't worry.
I think in Montreal
There
we
we
have
go.
the 15.
I don't have the 15. Nope.
Everybody except for Alan, I think, has.
No, there's more here, Stephen.
Who does
I
know?
don't have the 15.
Ben,
Look,
Ben, that's a shunda. I will make sure you get the 15.
We have the 15.
Yeah.
I got one.
I think.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
really?
had a 15.
Got
I
it.
had a 15.
Even that's more than one.
yeah, I had those. Sure.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Here.
We'll make this happen for sure. If you're missing out, we'll make it happen for sure.
This has been a really fantastic call, and I appreciate, you you walking us through everything. There's certainly, I didn't have the same appreciation as I think I now will, and I think I think most people on this call are in the same boat. And and really the work that you did with your team, and also so thanks to Mark Valencia, who's also here with us, who helped make this happen. So really to the whole team from Corby's and JP Weiser, really thank you guys for this. This is now the second year, and we look forward to many more years of doing these types of great events with you. And Colin, next year I will have to make sure that they spring to fly you east. This way, then we'll do it in person.
I think I need to be in person for the next one.
Yeah.
I want that. Yeah.
And in that case, it's only 22, 23, 35 and beyond.
Oh boy. If I'm there in person, just wait. I'm putting them away right now for you guys. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. So again, thank you to you, Colin. Thank you to David and Leanne for once again stepping up and helping us with this, and to our partners at DSM and Anthony Rose and Rob Wilder, where I know Marnie's working on a show for them right now, because I don't think any of us didn't enjoy the back and forth, the relationship that they have. So to have them take a night out and spend it with us is greatly appreciated. And again, to all of you for supporting this initiative, which supports our scholarship program for students in Israel who have been all especially hard hit because of the pandemic, and going to support Arab Israelis, Israeli students, single mothers, are really looking at the more disadvantaged groups. So really thank you to all of you. And we'll say L'chaim, have a nice evening. On the upside, nobody has to worry about driving anywhere, so just make it to your bedroom safely. And thank you very much to all of you. And one last special thank you to our friends from Montreal. Great to have you guys with us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, for organizing this, because this was the most fun Zoom call I've had since COVID started.
Yeah. We always try. Perfect, guys. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening, everybody.
Safe, everybody. Thank you, Colin. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks,
Thank
Colin.
you.
Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Stephen.
Bye, guys.
I can't
That
stand
was
up.
great.
Yeah. And thank you again, Colin. I really appreciate it. It was amazing.
Oh, Stephen, thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Colin, that's fantastic. Really, thank you. We learned a lot.
Wonderful.
Colin, he wants his 15. Don't worry.
Alana,
Yes.
Give me a list, Stephen. I'll figure this out for us.
That's
Was that Joyce?
Appreciate it.
Leanne,
Oh, hi, Leanne. I couldn't see.
why didn't you make cookies?
My cookies aren't kosher, so otherwise I would have given cookies to everybody in a bag.
Your cookies look amazing.
Thank
Really?
you.
Good for you.
I love, if you ever need Herzl ones, David, you know where to find me.
Okay, will you send me your contact info? It's just lmatlow@me.com.
Yeah, no, for sure. How was your thing on the weekend? I'm sorry.
Someone here has their special birthday coming up.
Who? This one? David, I've got your back, okay?
That would be
I gotta
fun.
jump out. Dave and Leanne, great to meet you. Great to meet
Okay,
everyone.
stay,
Colin.
Colin.
Have a great night, everyone. Yeah.
Leanne,
thank you.
I live right around the corner, so it's close by.
All right, that would be awesome.
Bye,
All right,
Colin.
send
Thank
me
you.
your contact info.
I will, okay.
All right, be
Thanks a
well.
lot for organizing. Good night.